You can't win a general election if you don't acknowledge the 40% of Republicans who are saying we don't want Donald Trump. And you can't do that if you've got a candidate who says anyone who supports his opponent is barred permanently from MAGA. That's not the way you win elections. Now, to my Republican family, I will say this. There are a few things we need to be looking at. The first thing is electability. If you have a candidate that can't win 40% of the vote in the early states, if you have a candidate who can't bring in independents, if you have a candidate that is driving people out of our party, then that is a sinking ship guaranteeing a President Kamala Harris. But it's not just the party that he's losing. He's shifting policy. Republicans used to be about fiscal responsibility. Republicans used to be about smaller government and less spending. But under Donald Trump, he put us $8 trillion out of the $34 trillion, $8 trillion in debt in just 4 years, more than any other president. He's not once talked about fiscal responsibility, and since what have we seen? Republicans and Democrats are now all spending like drunken sailors, and taxpayers are getting the short end of that stick. Then he's changed policy on national security. It used to be that Republicans cared about peace through strength. Now we don't see that anymore. Now we see Trump siding with Putin, a tyrant and a dictator who kills his political opponents, who arrests journalists and holds them hostage, and who continues to say that he wants to destroy America. And you've got Trump saying that he would encourage Putin to invade our allies. This isolationist approach that Donald Trump is putting over the party is creating a scenario that puts us further in war, not preventing war. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends. After 9/11, we needed a lot of friends. And then you're looking at the fact that Donald Trump is now turning the Republican Party into his own playpen. Look at what's happening at the RNC. The idea that they would be choosing a chair and a director before a primary is over is a massive control move by Donald Trump. The idea that there is a resolution out there in the RNC saying Donald Trump can't use the RNC, for his legal slush fund, and he's upset that that was proposed, tells you everything you need to know. The idea that those now moving into the RNC are saying the RNC is only going to be about Donald Trump, you can hang up House, you can hang up Senate, and the rest of the ticket. It is now becoming, the Republican Party is now becoming Donald Trump's playpen. And what I will tell you is I had a woman last night in Troy. We had several hundred people there. And she came up to me and she said, I have been a lifelong Republican. She said, I have never voted other than Republican. And she said, and now my friends are telling me because I don't support Donald Trump, I'm a Democrat. If this is the direction the Republican Party is going into, this is going to lead this country towards socialism. The Democrats, I fully believe, are going to have a younger candidate going into the general election. If Donald Trump is the candidate, Republicans will once again lose the election. We'll lose the swing states, we'll lose the House, we'll lose the Senate, we won't take anything with us. Then I say to my American family, it is not normal for us to sit at the dinner table and have political decisions that destroy families. It is not normal to go to work and be scared about what you say because you're worried you're going to be fired. It is not normal for Joe Biden to call opponents fascists and Donald Trump to call opponents vermin. None of this is normal. And the focus needs to be on the younger generation, because all they feel is the anger, the hatred, and the division. They wonder how they're ever going to own a home, get a job, make ends meet, and if war's going to break out. Americans owe it to our kids and your grandkids that we start to get our country back to a unified place where we're all Americans. I am trying to do that. I am giving you every red flag I possibly can about the direction that the country's going in. Now I just need people to hear it. I need states that are voting to act on it, and I need to see that we can stop this sinking ship before it takes off.
Ambassador Haley, whether it is here in Michigan or any of the upcoming states you are campaigning in, today, which state can you tell us that you can definitively win?
We have 21 states and territories that are getting ready to happen. Why don't we wait and see what happens? We don't have to have a crystal ball and say this is going to happen or that's going to happen. We don't live in Russia. We don't anoint kings. We have elections. Let people vote.
But can you name a single state you can win?
I can name that 70% of Americans don't want Donald Trump or Joe Biden. That's a pretty big number. I can name that 40% of Republicans in all our early states don't want Donald Trump. That's a point that you need to talk about. Those things matter. 60% of Americans think Donald Trump and Joe Biden are too old. Talk about that. Instead of talking about what we think is going to happen, let's talk about what the American people have told us.
What about
the Marquette poll that shows that Donald Trump can't beat Joe Biden and that I defeat Joe Biden by 18 points.
Ambassador, going through your announcement report that you're going to host 10 top dollar fundraisers. That sounds like someone who's sticking it out beyond Super Tuesday. Can you say definitively now that you will be going and campaigning beyond Super Tuesday?
I can tell you that we raised $1 million in 24 hours after the election in South Carolina, that we are continuing to see the dollars come in because Americans want a voice, and we're giving them that voice. And as long as Americans want me to be that voice, I will continue to fight for them. As long as we think that there's an option, we're going to keep on doing it.
So you'll be
Haley, you said that Donald Trump is shutting the door on the voters who support you. If you're no longer an option in this race, do you think your voters will support Biden or sit out the 2024 general election altogether?
I think that if I'm not an alternative in this race, I think that Donald Trump will lose. It's that simple.
Speculation has mounted that you may run as a third-party candidate. Have you spoken with Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
I have not spoken with anyone about anything other than running as a Republican. I have not talked to anyone. I have not put time into that. That's not anything I've ever thought about. I'm running in a Republican primary, and I'm going to continue to run in the Republican primary.
You talked about President Biden is getting a lot of criticism from the Arab American community here in Michigan vis-a-vis his policy regarding Israel and Gaza. What would you be doing if you were president, and what message would you send to the Arab American community?
I think, first of all, we need to tell the American people the truth. What you have seen is Joe Biden has not told the American people why they should care about Ukraine. President Biden has not told people what to think about Israel. He's actually flip-flop on it, and he's made it very unclear about where he stands. And when you do that, you see people come out and get upset. And I think the Arab community is wondering what he's for and what he's not, because he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. What I think we should say we're not for terrorism. And someone has to hold Iran accountable. Iran continues to do this terrorist activity, whether it's on our American military soldiers who have died, Navy SEALs who are missing, and the strikes that keep coming. They continue to do this on Israel, whether it's the brutality October 7th, and no one's doing anything. You look at the fact that now we're getting strikes out of Lebanon from Hezbollah, that's a problem. Joe Biden has yet to strengthen the sanctions back on Iran, and the conversation that Joe Biden needs to have with the Arab community is for the good of the people in Gaza, for what is happening in Rafah. All that can stop if they would put pressure on Iran to make sure they stop using these people as human shields and allowing this terrorist activity to continue. When the focus is on Iran, that's when things will stop. If you keep the focus on Israel, you are missing the one that's doing the terrorist activity, and that's the one we need to be focused on.
Governor Haley, so you didn't really start making this case against Donald Trump really in full until the beginning of this year, and exit polls from South Carolina showed that most of voters had actually made up their mind at the end of last year. Do you regret kind of waiting to make this case against Donald Trump and how he can't win?
No, not at all. There were 14 people in the race. I had a dozen of the fellas I had to beat, so we had to knock them out one at a time. Now this is the one-on-one opponent, and this is the case that I'm making. But no, if we had done that in the very beginning, we would have been in Chris Christie. That's not the goal of what we wanted to do. We wanted to make sure that we showed a choice.
Governor Haley, you're both going, so AFP, they've stopped spending towards your campaign. What's your most convincing pitch to donors for why they should continue backing your candidacy?
I mean, look, AFP never gave us monetary funds, so we were never financially dependent on AFP. They're a great organization that believes in freedom and smaller government, and I appreciate the partnership, but that wasn't something we were focused on for money. And so right now, you look at the 24 hours after getting $1 million in, there are American people all over this country that are begging for a voice. I mean, we have had over 300,000 donors now from all 50 states. 95% of those are $200 or less. Those are real people focused on what is happening in our country. Those are real people focused on what country their children are going to be living in. And those are real people that deserve a voice. Not just the ones that are the loudest, but the ones that we remember are Americans too, and they deserve to have their voices.
Governor Haley, on the border, both Biden and Trump are going. Are they ignoring you out of the race?
All right, so that ended a little bit more abruptly than I think most of us expected, but we will have more on Nikki Haley's stop in Michigan coming up a little bit later tonight on News 10 at 6 p.m. We hope to see you then.